You know what's fascinating? Right now, as you're watching this video, there are monks sitting in monasteries around the world who haven't experienced anxiety in years, maybe decades, not because they're lucky, not because they have some genetic advantage, not because their lives are easier than yours, but because they've discovered something that most people spend their entire lives searching for, something that modern psychology is only just beginning to understand, and something that you can start applying in your life right now, today, this very moment. They've cracked the code on anxiety, and I'm about to share that code with you. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to dive deep into the monk mindset, the actual practical mental frameworks that these spiritual practitioners use to obliterate anxiety from the inside out, and by the end of this video, you're going to understand why your anxiety isn't actually the problem. It's how you're relating to it that's keeping you trapped. And once you see what I'm about to show you, you can't unsee it, and that's when everything changes. Let's get into this. So let me start by telling you about this monk I met during a meditation retreat several years ago. His name was Ajahn Sumedho, and he was this elderly British man who had been a Buddhist monk for over 50 years. I remember sitting across from him during a Q&A session, and someone asked him the question that I think we all wanted to ask. They said, "Do you ever feel anxious anymore?" And he smiled, this warm, genuine smile, and he said something that completely shifted my understanding of anxiety. He said, "Anxiety still arises, but I don't become anxious." Now at first that sounds like some kind of cryptic Zen riddle, right? But what he meant, and what I've come to understand through years of studying contemplative traditions and modern neuroscience, is that monks don't eliminate anxiety by fighting it. They eliminate it by changing their relationship to it. And that distinction, that one shift in perspective, is everything. Here's what most people don't understand about anxiety. We treat it like it's an invader, like it's this external enemy that's attacking us, so we fight it, we resist it, we try to push it away, we take medications to suppress it, we distract ourselves to avoid it, we tell ourselves we shouldn't feel this way. And you know what happens when you do that? The anxiety gets stronger. It's like quicksand. The more you struggle against it, the deeper you sink. Monks figured this out centuries ago, long before we had brain scans and neuroimaging technology. They discovered that anxiety isn't actually the problem. Our resistance to anxiety is the problem. It's the resistance that creates the suffering. It's the resistance that turns a temporary feeling into a chronic condition. It's the resistance that makes you feel like you're drowning when you're actually just standing in shallow water. Now, let me explain what's happening in your brain when you experience anxiety. Your amygdala, which is this almond-shaped structure deep in your brain, is constantly scanning for threats. It's your ancient alarm system, designed to keep you alive when you were running from predators on the savannah. When it detects a threat, real or imagined, it triggers your fight-or-flight response. Your heart races, your breathing becomes shallow, stress hormones flood your system. Your muscles tense up, all preparing you to either fight or run away. This is a perfectly natural, healthy response when you're actually in danger. The problem is, your amygdala can't tell the difference between a real threat and an imagined one. It can't tell the difference between a lion chasing you and a presentation at work. It can't tell the difference between actual danger and your own worried thoughts about the future. So you end up in this state of chronic activation, constantly triggered by threats that don't actually exist, living in a perpetual state of emergency when there's no emergency at all. Here's where the monk mindset comes in. Monks train themselves to observe their anxiety without becoming identified with it. They create space between the sensation of anxiety and their sense of self. Let me give you a practical example of what this looks like. When most people feel anxiety rising, their internal dialogue goes something like this. "Oh no, I'm getting anxious. Why am I anxious? I shouldn't be anxious. This is terrible. What if it gets worse? I can't handle this. There's something wrong with me." See what's happening there? You're not just experiencing anxiety. You're having anxiety about your anxiety. You're layering judgment, resistance, and fear on top of the original sensation, and that's what creates the spiral. That's what makes it unbearable. A monk, on the other hand, when they feel that same sensation rising, their internal dialogue is completely different. They notice it. They acknowledge it. They might even say something like, "There's anxiety arising in this moment. Not I am anxious, but there is anxiety. Do you see the difference?" They're not identifying with it. They're observing it. They're watching it the same way you might watch clouds passing through the sky. The clouds aren't you. They're just phenomena passing through your field of awareness. Anxiety is the same. It's just a temporary pattern of thoughts, sensations, and emotions passing through your consciousness. It's not who you are. When you can see it that way, when you can create that space, something remarkable happens. The anxiety loses its power over you. It's still there, but it doesn't consume you, it doesn't define you, it doesn't control you. This is what's called metacognitive awareness in psychology, or mindfulness in contemplative traditions. It's the ability to be aware of your own mental processes. It's the ability to think about your thinking, to feel your feelings without being overwhelmed by them. And here's the beautiful thing. This isn't some mystical ability that only enlightened monks possess. This is a skill that you can develop. Your brain is neuroplastic, which means it can change and rewire itself based on how you use it. Every time you practice observing your thoughts and emotions without getting caught up in them, you're literally rewiring your neural pathways. You're strengthening the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for executive function and emotional regulation. You're weakening the automatic connection between the amygdala and your stress response. You're training your brain to respond to anxiety in a completely different way. Now let's talk about the second major component of the monk mindset. And this one is going to challenge a lot of your assumptions about anxiety. Monks embrace impermanence. They deeply understand, not just intellectually, but experientially, that everything changes. Everything arises and passes away. Nothing lasts forever. And this includes anxiety. One of the reasons anxiety feels so overwhelming is because when you're in it, it feels permanent. It feels like it's always going to be this way. It feels like you're stuck in this state forever. Your brain, in that moment, loses access to the memory of ever feeling different. You can't remember what it was like to feel calm. You can't imagine feeling peaceful again. The anxiety becomes your entire reality. Monks train themselves to see through this illusion. They know from direct experience that every mental state is temporary. Every emotion is transient. Every thought is fleeting. They've sat through thousands of hours of meditation watching sensations arise and pass away, watching thoughts appear and dissolve, watching emotions swell and fade. They've seen it happen so many times that they know it in their bones. Anxiety comes and anxiety goes. It always does. It's incapable of staying forever because nothing stays forever. When you really understand this, when you feel it in your body, not just think it in your mind, it changes everything. Because now when anxiety arises, you don't panic, you don't catastrophize, you don't think, oh no, here we go again, I'm going to feel this way forever. Instead, you think, this is temporary, this will pass, it always does. Let me give you a practical technique that monks use to work with impermanence. It's called noting. When you notice anxiety arising, instead of getting swept away by it, you simply note it. You say to yourself, anxiety, anxiety, or fear, fear, or worry, worry. You're labeling the experience. And then you watch it. You notice where you feel it in your body. Is it tightness in your chest? Is it butterflies in your stomach? Is it tension in your shoulders? You bring your attention to the physical sensations, and you watch them with curiosity, not trying to change them, not trying to make them go away, just observing them. And here's what you'll discover if you do this. The sensations aren't static. They're constantly changing. The tightness in your chest might intensify for a moment, then soften slightly. The butterflies might move from your stomach to your throat. The tension might shift from your shoulders to your jaw. Everything is in flux. Everything is moving. Everything is changing. And if you keep watching, without interfering, without resisting, you'll notice that the anxiety peaks and then it starts to diminish. It might take 30 seconds, it might take 5 minutes, but it always changes, it always passes. And every time you experience this, every time you watch anxiety arise and pass away, you're training your brain. You're teaching yourself at a deep visceral level that you can handle this, that it's not dangerous, that it's just a temporary state. The third element of the monk mindset is something that might surprise you. It's acceptance. Now, I know what you're thinking. Wait, I thought we were trying to destroy anxiety. How is accepting it going to destroy it? This is the paradox that most people miss. The fastest way to eliminate anxiety is to stop trying to eliminate it. I know that sounds backwards, but stay with me. When you fight anxiety, when you resist it, when you try to push it away, you're sending a message to your brain that this is dangerous. You're reinforcing the threat. Your amygdala sees that you're scared of this feeling, and it thinks, oh, if they're this scared of it, it must be really dangerous. I better increase the alarm. So the anxiety intensifies. This is why people who struggle with panic attacks often develop panic disorder. They have a panic attack, which is terrifying, and then they become afraid of having another panic attack, so they start avoiding situations where they might panic. They become hypervigilant, constantly monitoring their body for signs of anxiety. And guess what? This hypervigilance and fear of anxiety creates more anxiety. It's a vicious cycle. Monks break this cycle through acceptance. They allow anxiety to be present. They make space for it. They stop fighting it. This doesn't mean they like it. This doesn't mean they want it. It just means they're not adding resistance to it. They're letting it be. And when you do this, something counterintuitive happens. The anxiety starts to dissolve on its own. Because anxiety feeds on resistance. It needs your fear of it to survive. When you stop being afraid of it, when you stop fighting it, it has nothing to hold on to. It's like fuel being cut off from a fire. The fire might burn for a little while longer, but eventually it burns itself out. There's a meditation teacher named Tara Brach who talks about this concept using the acronym RAIN. It stands for Recognize, Allow, Investigate, and Nurture. When anxiety arises, first you recognize it. You acknowledge that it's here. Then you allow it. You give it permission to be present. You don't try to push it away. Then you investigate it with curiosity. What does it feel like? Where do you feel it? What thoughts are accompanying it? And finally, you nurture yourself. You bring some kindness and compassion to your experience. You might place a hand on your heart and say something like, "This is hard right now. This is a moment of suffering. May I be kind to myself." This practice, this simple 4-step process, is incredibly powerful. It completely shifts your relationship with anxiety. Instead of being at war with your own experience, you're meeting it with acceptance and compassion. Now let's talk about the 4th component of the monk mindset, and this is where things get really interesting. Monks understand that anxiety is often caused by living in the wrong time. What do I mean by that? Your mind is constantly time traveling. It's either dwelling in the past, replaying things that already happened, or it's projecting into the future, worrying about things that haven't happened yet and might never happen. And here's the thing. You can't experience anxiety in the present moment. Think about that. Right now, in this exact moment, as you're reading these words or hearing these words, are you actually in danger? Not thinking about danger, not worrying about danger, but actually in danger right now? Probably not. Most of the time, the present moment is actually okay. It's your thoughts about the future or the past that create the suffering. Monks train themselves to anchor in the present moment. This is the essence of mindfulness practice. They bring their attention back again and again to what's happening right now. The breath moving in and out, the sensation of their body sitting, the sounds around them, the visual field in front of them. Whatever is actually occurring in this moment. And when you do this, when you really commit to being present, anxiety doesn't have anywhere to land. Because anxiety is always about something that might happen, or something that already happened. It can't exist in the now. This is why breath work is so central to anxiety management. When you focus on your breath, you're anchoring yourself in the present moment. You can't breathe in the past, you can't breathe in the future. You can only breathe right now. So every time you bring your attention to your breath, you're pulling yourself out of the anxiety-producing time travel and into the peace of the present moment. Here's a practice you can start using immediately. It's called the 5-4-3-2-1 technique, and it's a grounding practice that brings you into the present moment. When you notice anxiety rising, you pause, and you identify 5 things you can see. Just look around and name them, either out loud or in your mind. I see a door. I see a plant. I see a picture. I see a table. I see a lamp. Then you identify 4 things you can touch. Actually reach out and touch them if you can. Feel the texture. Feel the temperature. I can feel the fabric of my shirt. I can feel the chair beneath me. I can feel the floor under my feet. I can feel my hands on my legs. Then 3 things you can hear. Really listen. I hear birds outside. I hear the hum of the refrigerator. I hear my own breathing. Then two things you can smell. Maybe it's coffee, maybe it's fresh air, maybe it's nothing in particular, but you bring your attention to your sense of smell. And then one thing you can taste. Maybe it's just the taste in your mouth, maybe you take a sip of water. This entire process takes maybe a minute, and what it does is it interrupts the anxiety spiral and brings you back into your body, back into your senses, back into the present moment. The fifth element of the monk mindset is understanding the nature of thoughts. Most people believe their thoughts. If you think I'm going to fail, you believe you're going to fail. If you think something bad is going to happen, you believe something bad is going to happen. If you think I can't handle this, you believe you can't handle it. Your thoughts feel like truth. They feel like reality. But here's what monks understand. Thoughts are not facts. They're just mental events. They're just patterns of neural activity in your brain. They're not accurate predictions of the future. They're not reliable assessments of reality. They're just thoughts, and you don't have to believe them. There's a concept in cognitive behavioral therapy called cognitive diffusion, which is basically the same thing contemplative traditions have been teaching for thousands of years. It's the ability to step back from your thoughts and see them for what they are, just thoughts. Instead of thinking, I'm going to fail, you think, I'm having the thought that I'm going to fail. Do you feel the difference? One feels like an inevitable reality. The other feels like a mental event that you're observing. When you can diffuse from your anxious thoughts, when you can see them as just thoughts rather than truths, they lose their grip on you. You don't have to argue with them. You don't have to fight them. You don't have to prove them wrong. You just let them float by like clouds in the sky. Monks practice this constantly. They sit in meditation and they watch their thoughts arise and pass away. They don't engage with them. They don't follow them. They don't believe them. They just watch them come and go. And over time, they develop this deep understanding that they are not their thoughts. They are the awareness in which thoughts appear. This is a profound shift, because most people are completely identified with their thinking mind. They think, I am my thoughts, but you're not. You're the one who's aware of the thoughts. You're the space in which thoughts occur. And when you realize this, you suddenly have freedom. Because thoughts can come and go, but you, the awareness, remain unchanged. The sixth component of the monk mindset is something that might seem counterintuitive when we're talking about anxiety. It's gratitude. Now, I know when you're in the grip of anxiety, the last thing you feel is grateful. But here's what's interesting. Gratitude and anxiety cannot coexist in your brain at the same time. They activate completely different neural networks. Anxiety activates your threat detection system. Gratitude activates your reward system. They're mutually exclusive. So when you deliberately cultivate gratitude, you're literally rewiring your brain away from anxiety. Monks practice gratitude constantly, not just when things are going well, but especially when things are difficult. They find things to appreciate in every moment. Even in suffering, there's something to be grateful for. Maybe it's the fact that you're alive to experience this. Maybe it's the people who care about you. Maybe it's the roof over your head or the food in your belly. Maybe it's just the fact that this moment will pass and you'll have the opportunity to experience something different. When you train your brain to look for things to appreciate, you're training it to focus on what's working rather than what's threatening. You're shifting your attention away from danger and towards safety, abundance, and connection. Here's a practice that can transform your relationship with anxiety. Every night before you go to sleep, write down 3 things you're grateful for from that day. And here's the key. They can't be the same things every night. You have to find 3 new things. This forces your brain to actively scan your day for moments of goodness, for things that went right, for experiences worth appreciating. At first, this might feel difficult. Your brain is probably trained to scan for problems, for threats, for what went wrong. But if you do this every single night, within a few weeks, you'll notice your brain starting to automatically look for things to be grateful for throughout the day. You'll be rewiring your neural pathways from a negativity bias to a gratitude bias. The 7th element of the monk mindset is compassion, particularly self-compassion. This is huge. Most people who struggle with anxiety are incredibly harsh with themselves. They judge themselves for being anxious. They criticize themselves for not being strong enough, for not being able to just get over it. They compare themselves to other people who seem to have it all together. They feel ashamed of their anxiety. And all of this self-judgment, all of this harshness, it just creates more anxiety. It's anxiety on top of anxiety. You're not just dealing with the original anxiety, you're dealing with the anxiety about being anxious, and the shame about not being able to control it, and the fear that there's something fundamentally wrong with you. Monks approach their own suffering with compassion. When they experience difficult emotions, they don't judge themselves. They don't think there's something wrong with them. They recognize that suffering is part of the human experience. Everyone suffers. Everyone struggles. Everyone has difficult emotions. There's nothing abnormal or wrong about experiencing anxiety. It doesn't mean you're broken. It doesn't mean you're weak, it just means you're human. When you can approach your anxiety with this kind of compassionate understanding, when you can treat yourself with the same kindness you would treat a good friend who's struggling, it changes everything. The anxiety is still there, but you're not adding a layer of self-judgment and shame on top of it, and that makes it so much more bearable. There's research by Kristin Neff and others showing that self-compassion is actually more effective than self-esteem for mental health and resilience. Self-esteem is based on evaluating yourself positively, on being good enough, on achieving things, on comparing yourself favorably to others. But self-compassion is unconditional. It doesn't depend on success or achievement. It's just kindness toward yourself because you're a human being who's suffering. And here's what's beautiful about self-compassion. It actually makes you more resilient, not less. When you're kind to yourself, you're more willing to acknowledge your struggles. You're more willing to ask for help. You're more willing to try new things even if you might fail, because you know that even if you do fail, you'll treat yourself with kindness. The 8th component of the monk mindset is purpose. Monks have a deep sense of purpose that transcends their individual anxiety. They're part of something larger than themselves. They're dedicated to a path of awakening, to reducing suffering, to cultivating wisdom and compassion. And this sense of purpose, this connection to something bigger than their own personal concerns, it puts anxiety in perspective. When you have a compelling reason to get up in the morning, when you have something you care deeply about, when you have a contribution you want to make to the world, your individual anxieties become less consuming. They're still there, but they're not the center of your universe anymore. Think about it this way: if your entire focus is on yourself, on your own comfort, on avoiding anxiety, on feeling good, then every little discomfort becomes magnified. It becomes the most important thing in your world. But if you're focused on something beyond yourself, if you're working toward a goal that matters to you, if you're contributing to something meaningful, then anxiety becomes just one small part of your experience. It's not the whole story. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who survived the Nazi concentration camps, wrote about this in his book Man's Search for Meaning. He observed that the prisoners who survived weren't necessarily the strongest or the healthiest. They were the ones who had a reason to live, who had something to live for, who had a sense of meaning and purpose that sustained them even in the most horrific circumstances. You don't have to be a monk to cultivate this sense of purpose. You just have to find something you care about. Maybe it's your family. Maybe it's your work. Maybe it's a cause you believe in. Maybe it's creating something, helping others, learning something new. Whatever it is, when you orient your life around this purpose, when you make decisions based on what serves this purpose, anxiety naturally diminishes, because you're not spending all your energy focused on avoiding discomfort. You're spending your energy moving towards something meaningful. The 9th component of the monk mindset is community. Monks don't practice in isolation. They're part of a sangha, a community of practitioners. They support each other. They practice together. They share their struggles and insights. And this sense of connection, this feeling of being part of something larger than yourself, it's incredibly powerful for managing anxiety, because anxiety often comes with a sense of isolation. You feel like you're the only one who feels this way. You feel alone in your struggle. But when you're part of a community, when you can share your experience with others who understand, when you realize that everyone struggles with difficult emotions, it normalizes your experience. It takes away the shame and isolation. You might not have a monastery to join, but you can create your own community. You can find people who are also working on their mental health, who are also practicing mindfulness, who are also committed to growth and healing. This might be a meditation group, a therapy group, an online community, or just a few close friends who you can be real with. The key is having people in your life who you can be vulnerable with, who you don't have to pretend with, who will support you without judgment. Research consistently shows that social connection is one of the strongest predictors of mental health and well-being. We're social creatures, we need each other. And when we try to deal with our struggles alone, we make them so much harder than they need to be. The 10th and final component of the monk mindset is practice. This is the most important one. Monks don't just understand these concepts intellectually. They practice them. Every single day, for hours, they sit in meditation, they do walking meditation, they practice mindful eating, they practice mindful working. They bring awareness to every aspect of their lives, and this consistent, dedicated practice is what transforms their relationship with anxiety, because you can't think your way out of anxiety. You can't just understand these concepts and expect them to work. You have to embody them. You have to practice them. You have to train your nervous system, rewire your brain, develop new habits of mind. This doesn't mean you need to meditate for hours every day. You don't need to become a monk. But you do need to practice. Even just 10 or 15 minutes a day of sitting quietly, focusing on your breath, observing your thoughts and emotions without judgment, this consistent practice will change your brain. It will strengthen your ability to be present. It will increase your capacity to observe your anxiety without getting caught up in it. It will develop your metacognitive awareness. And over time, you'll notice that anxiety has less and less power over you, not because you're suppressing it or avoiding it, but because you've changed your relationship with it. You've learned to observe it, accept it, and let it pass through without getting swept away. So let me bring all of this together. The monk mindset that destroys anxiety from the inside out isn't about fighting anxiety or trying to eliminate it. It's about fundamentally changing how you relate to it. It's about observing rather than identifying. It's about accepting rather than resisting. It's about staying present rather than time traveling. It's about seeing thoughts as mental events rather than truths. It's about cultivating gratitude and compassion. It's about connecting to purpose and community. And it's about practicing every single day these new ways of being with your experience. When you do this, when you really commit to this path, anxiety doesn't disappear overnight, but it changes. It loses its grip on you. It becomes something you can work with, rather than something that controls you. And gradually, over time, you realize that you're not anxious anymore. Anxiety might still arise occasionally, but you're not identified with it. You're free.